Okay, let's get going here. Okay, this is going to be a quick lecture overview of the Johnson, Christensen, and Kagerman article, Reinventing Your Business Model. Again, remember this is 2008. We're still really early in terms of the switch over to kind of the Osterwalder sort of methodology. So again, this is background, what people were thinking about in terms of business models before that major piece of work came out. So the first thing that they talk about is that there is a correct way, quote unquote, to start thinking about your business model in terms of potentially changing it. And say that success does not start by thinking about changing your business model. That shouldn't be your primary objective. It starts about thinking about the opportunity that you have to satisfy customer needs. Then you develop a blueprint on how to satisfy those needs, i.e. the model, and you compare this new blueprint with the existing model and see how much you need to change. I mean, that's a sensible way to do it. And then they produce a definition of business models. And their definition is, given that you've seen quite a few of these now, they do seem to be kind of converging in some sort of way. And we lead off with the customer value proposition, and then the profit formula, then their key resources and key processes. Okay, that should again start to get rather familiar. And they define customer value proposition, or CVP, in a way that we know. It's about a bundle of intangible and intangible benefits. And they say the best customer value propositions are when alternative products and services have not yet been designed with the real job in mind. And you can design that proposition for the job, and only that job. So let me say this in a different way. Is that many products and services that are being sold don't exactly focus on solving a customer problem. And if you can create a product or service that's designed specifically to solve that customer's problem, that customer's need, that customer's pain, okay, you have the best chance of success. Okay? So when you're crafting your product or service, think about solving that need. It's not about the product, it's not about the service, it really is about solving that need. Profit formula. Profit formula made up of these four things: revenue model, as you would expect, cost structure, margin model, and resource velocity. Now, I've spoken about a revenue model before, and when we're talking about a simple business model, the revenue model sort of includes all of these sorts of things. But in this particular article, when they're speaking about the revenue model, they're speaking about a portion of the profit formula. So you need how you're going to get the money in, what sort of cost structure you have, what sort of profit margins are you going to have, and how fast do you turn inventory, fixed assets, and other assets. Basically, how well do you utilize the resources that you have. And one tip that they give, which is an interesting tip, is that you need to start with the price that the customer is willing to pay for the value proposition, and then work backwards. And I think that is a really good way to do it. A really good way to do it. Then there are key resources. And the key resources, again, are tangible and intangible resources that you need to deliver the value proposition to the target customer. Okay? What do you need to deliver the value proposition to the target customer? And again, these can be tangible in people, technology, products, facility, equipment, distribution channels, brand, those sorts of elements. And then finally, key processes. What are the key processes that you need? Operational processes, managerial processes, again, to allow the company to deliver value in a way that can be successfully repeated and increase in scale. Okay. And then there are rules, metrics, and norms, in large part, that you use to measure your progress and measure your success. And we'll talk a little bit more about them shortly. And then they talk a little bit about creating a customer value proposition. And they have a couple of examples, but I thought this was most important here. They have one way to focus, okay, on creating customer value, is to put your emphasis on the 4 most common barriers keeping people from getting their job done. Now, you don't have to focus on all 4, but focus on one of them at a time. And one is insufficient wealth. The second is access. The third is skill. And the fourth is time. So these 4, can we say, barriers that keep people from getting the job done, if you can create your value proposition around one of those, okay, then that is a good way to start. A good way to start. And they discuss a couple of examples here. Specifically, they talk about Hilti, the tool company, as well as Tata's nanocar. A nanocar with respect to the insufficient wealth, and they talk about Hilti as well. What's interesting about Hilti is that Hilti switched from selling their product, tools and whatnot, to a more service-oriented system. So it's both a distribution and delivery and revenue and production model all rolled into one. And it's very similar to, for those who've heard me speak about GE Engine, a similar model with respect to GE Engine, whereby they are leasing usage time for their tools as opposed to selling them, which is kind of an interesting way to go. We can talk about this a little bit more in class. Designing a profit formula, again, not going to spend time here. The point is that you need to design a way that you can deliver this value proposition, keeping in mind that you have to be profitable. So you need to have a spread between the cost that you bear and the revenue that you generate. If you can combine your key resources and your key processes in a good or unique way, this can be what leads to a sustainable advantage. And it's important to keep in mind this as well, is that if you're combining your own resources and your own processes in a way, it almost is by definition a unique way. So if you can combine your resources and your processes that really deliver a value proposition and profitably, okay, you may be able to develop a sustainable competitive advantage because you do it in a unique sort of way. Norms and rules and metrics and whatnot are often the last elements to emerge because you can't really see these things, many of them, until you actually start selling your product or service. And here's just a list of them. For example, now again, these are elements that you may measure Okay, gross margin, opportunity size, unit pricing, unit margin, time to break even, net present value, fixed cost investment, credit terms. This is not an exhaustive list. This is just an example of mostly financial measures right here that you can track to see your progress. In addition to financial measures, there are some operational measures as well. Product quality, supplier quality, owned versus outsourced manufacturing. What's that breakdown? What's that ratio? Customer service, channels of distribution, lead time, throughput. How much product are you getting through your distribution channels? That's what throughput is. And then finally, there are others: pricing, performance demand, the product development life cycle, the basis for individual awards and incentives, brand parameters and things. So all of these things and hundreds more are items that you can measure. Now keep in mind that these measures are basically for your internal use to determine whether or not you are succeeding. And oftentimes, how you measure, what you measure is what you're going to get. So it's important to make sure that you're measuring the right things. Another pretty good thing that this article does, it talks about when is a new business model needed, and they have five different scenarios here, five different strategic circumstances that often require a business model change. So, when you have an opportunity to address a large customer segment that's been shut out from the market. Okay, that makes sense. Capitalizing on a new technology by wrapping a new business model around it. Okay, so that includes Google and Xerox and those sorts of things. Job to be done focus, where one doesn't actually exist. Okay. And the example they use here of Federal Express entering the package delivery market, that they didn't try to compete through lower price or better marketing. Instead, they concentrated on fulfilling the entirely unmet customer need to receive packages far, far faster and more reliable than any other service could do. To fend off low-end disruptors, you might need a new model there. And to respond to a shifting basis of competition. Okay, and what that means is, let's say you were competing before with your competitors in terms of quality, but then they added speed. So now it's not just quality, it's speed that you have to compete on. And so this might require a different business model. Now, these are questions that you need to have the answer for. So you need to have an affirmative or a yes for all of these questions for you to greatly increase the chance or odds of success in executing your new business model. And I have an asterisk up here first, because the main one, of course, is the opportunity, okay, is the opportunity worth it? I mean, is the opportunity large enough to warrant all the effort for this business model reinvention? So that's the ultimate question. But once you have a yes for that, you can ask, can you nail the job with a focused and compelling customer value proposition? Can you develop a model where all the elements integrate efficiently? When we're talking about the elements, we're talking about profit formula, customer value, key process, and key resources. Okay, or if not all of them, a good portion of them. Can you create a model that's not negatively affected from the firm's other business model? Because if you're creating a new model, you already have a model, and you don't want to create a model that negatively impacts the other model if you can help it. And finally, will the new business model disrupt competitors? Okay. Of course, if it disrupts competitors, that's to your advantage. when will the old business model work? Because not all the time do you need a new business model. They talk about Procter and Gamble introducing their new kind of game-changing products, and they did that within their current business model. So you don't necessarily have to always change your business model. So when will the old business model work? When you can fulfill the new customer value proposition by using the old model. Okay, with the current profit formula, using most, if not all, of your key resources and processes, and you can use the same core metrics, rules, and norms that you currently use in the business. So if you can do these things within the old model, okay, especially fulfill the new customer value proposition, then perhaps you don't need to create a new business model. Okay, that's the end of this lecture. I'll be back to you shortly.